Wow. Hey, much love and respect to everybody listening, tuned in. Appreciate you guys making the time to be here once again. Thank you for that. Thank you for all the support and for taking the time to watch the videos. Really appreciate that. Today, we're just going to continue reviewing for educational purposes, for critique, commentary, you know, under fair use. We're going to go ahead and get into some history that a lot of people are not aware of, that needs to be known, at least remembered. And this book that we've already read, reviewed a chapter last week. We're going to go ahead and get into another chapter, another topic, another history here that needs to be known. This book is The Invasion of Indian Country in the 20th Century, American Capitalism and Tribal Natural Resources. And this is by Donald L. Fishiko, or Fesico. All right, so shout out to Donald. If you like the book, make sure to get it. Again, fair use. We're just here for education purposes and commentary and review. So we go to page 27. This is chapter 2. And it says here, the Osage murders and oil, or the Osage, or Osage. Sorry if I say it wrong. It says the murders of the Osage for the royalty money they had received from oil has been called the Reign of Terror, and they represented the most blatant expression of the greed for Indian lands. In one notorious case, more than a dozen murders occurred within one family. Following a 3-year investigation, the federal government linked the killings to one master criminal, William K. Hale, self-proclaimed king of the Osage. During the mid-1800s, white or European settlers pushed the Osage from their native lands, leading to their removal to Indian territory. According to the allotment policy, after the tribe was given a reservation, the Osage were assigned tracts of land and had rights to mineral development on an individual basis. The history of the Reign of Terror began in the early 1900s when oil was discovered on Osage land. Among the Osages, among other Indian groups, the family unit was and continues to be crucial to the existence and identity of the people as a whole. In fact, the family unit was often perceived as being more important than the individual family members. You guys hear that? That's how they got down, man. Tribe up all the way. Strength was found in numbers, and hunting or fighting for survival was more effective when the family worked together in a cooperative effort. Father, mother, children, grandparents, aunts, and uncles actually constituted the extended family, in parentheses, an elemental quality of native society. The bond between the members was a deep devotion because being connected by blood was the strongest link possible, all right? Connected by blood, guys, not by color. Pay attention. That's one of the strongest links possible. Blood, not by color. The elders, adults, and youths represented continuity, and the family always carried this quality forward, unless it was disrupted by some destructive force, as happened to the Osage Kyle family during the Reign of Terror. Right, in the parentheses, that's what they're calling that. Before we continue, guys, I just want to go ahead and go over some photos of the Osage that I have, very old photos, though we're talking about mostly from the 1800s. Okay, so you can know who, in general, we are talking about, what they look like. All right, so we're going to start out with a couple of pictures that I've colorized of the Osage from these time periods. This is supposed to be Nompawale. That's his name. He's an Osage tribe. If you guys can look real quick, you see the copper colored. That's not a light-skinned man. And remember, black is not a people, tribe, or nation. We're not saying people are so-called black. So This is the Osage Sioux, three of them right here on the left. And on the right, you have a Pamunkey people too. But I just wanted to go ahead and show you the Osage. All right, we're going to see an up close. You guys see? Now, if you put these three men, you know, and you put them in so-called black neighborhoods, walking around with regular clothes, nobody would be saying, "Oh, hey, look, that's a native." They would just be calling him a colored person, a black man, right? A Negro, so-called African American. All right, we're gonna continue. This is in the middle, an Osage man. You guys see that? On the left, a Ute. On the right, a Sioux. And you see, this is again. Remember the definition of American in the Webster's dictionary of 1828. American is means the copper colored races found here by the Europeans. Copper colored races. Okay, Osage man right in the middle. Again, you see him? Osage, right? This is what we're talking about today. So you have perspective. Here's another image. All the way to the right, you see Pawuska. He's in Osage. And in the middle, another Osage chief. To the left, it's a Southern Cheyenne warrior, So this is part of my colorized photos, image, videos playlist that I have. American Indians, real photos colorized. So you guys go check it out if you haven't seen it. I've shown so many. I still got more to do. I just haven't done them in a while. But yeah, these are again the Osage. Who are we talking about today? So we can have perspective. You see what they look like? Very dark complexion people. All right, swarthy. Here is in the middle, we got George Red Eagle, Huapa, and the husband of Ogash Shang Red Eagle, and Albert Mudd, who's in Osage. Okay, and then in the right, we have Gus Ruck. He's from the Assiniboine Nation. And we got Southern Plains Man on the left. All right. It looks like he's could be what's that? Tribe. Okay, Okuk. I forget the name of the tribe, but could be Ojibwe, could be a lot of things. But you see, I'm assuming, sorry. Zooming to the ones in the middle. I just want you guys to see. You see this brother right here? Just look at, Yeah. I'm gonna keep going, and the person in the middle right here is Washin Hafat on skin, or what's a morning star. He's in Osage. This is about 1900. Then you've got a Santi man on the right and a jockey man to the left of him from 1902. You guys see? Let me just zoom in to him so you guys can see the complexion. See that? All right. This ain't Photoshop, guys, and this is not AI pictures. These are real photos. Okay. Here's a drawing. It says Los Indians Osage. So these are a depiction, a historical drawing of the Osage. This is from the 1600s. That's supposedly, right? They're depicting Indians from the 1600s. Osages. Okay. We got another one here. We got on the left, to show a silver knife or Bruch Comanche. And then we got on the right, okay, this is what I'm trying to tell you. You got to have perspective, guys. You got to have a lot of perspective. This is what I mean. A lot of context. Who are we talking about? Who's getting murdered? Again, this is in Osage, right? Chief, I'm going to show you his information. This is White Horse Eagle, born 1822. All right. Also called Big Chief White Horse Eagle, an Osage or Osage Indian chief, believed to be the chief of 105 Indian tribes. Listen to how big his following, his nation was, his tribe. He had mad respect. You see that? Copper-colored tribes of America. You remember who you are? We're talking about Osage, huh? You guys know White Eagle, right? Can't say that's not him. Grab all his pictures and colorize them. All right. And then look at the Comanche left, all right? And then we got more images. And all the way to the right, we have the Osage man. I'm going to get back to him. In the middle, we have an Apache Indian. To the left, a Piegan Indian. All right. And I believe those are related to the Blackfoot and Blackfeet, the Piegans. So you guys can see, like, let me just zoom in. This is like what I'm trying to tell you guys. You see that? That's a so-called black man. Don't matter if he doesn't have, you think, oh, he don't look like he had woolly hair. Like, you guys don't understand. Like, all skinfolk and kinfolk and so-called black folks around the world have every phenotype, every type of hair, guys. America included. Not America had different phenotypes, woolly hair, straight hair, curly hair, all that. Every type of hair and all the shades of copper complexion from the lightest copper to the darkest copper, right? So-called black, so-called Negro. You see, it's and then again the Osage. Now we're gonna see him later again, but one thing about him, as soon as I saw him in black and white in the black and white pictures, I kind of knew. Like, I mean, like I looked, I like he looks a little bit like Shaq to me. I don't know if that's just me, but something about his face, it looks a little bit like Shaquille O'Neal to me. But just check out the gear. Yeah, they messed up the picture here, but look at that. All right, that's an Osage man. So they were getting murdered, huh? We're gonna read that today, guys. So we got some Crow Indians on the left, and on the right we got Osages, right? Osages. This is what I want to show you guys. See, from the 1870s, right? Some of the survivors and leftover what all the crazy stuff that what happened to their nation. Continuing, we have another Osage here, a warrior. It says. Let me zoom into him. He's pretty cool. Like, if you show this to somebody, you might even think it's from Africa or something. Sometimes we don't tell people with context. You wouldn't really know. But yeah, he's an Osage. I mean, that's everybody has its own perspective and biases, but and here, check it out. Yeah, look at the homeboy, little man. Yeah, these are Pawnees, Pawnee dad and son, right? And on the right was a Pawnee, another Pawnee chief, the brave chief Neshare Rurera Hikute from 1858. All right, all the way from 1858. That's what I'm saying, man. You gotta remember who you are, man, and acknowledge all your ancestors, not just the Indian ones. Here we have an Osage man and a foreigner, it says, right? I just wanted to show and compare, right? So let me zoom in real quick. I did this on purpose. See how they all have a light skin or European man next to them? So right here we have a Navajo man and a pale skinned friend, right? Or that's probably his servant. He's probably indentured to this guy. Remember, guys. And then you got Osage man and a foreigner. I don't know why they hold their hands like that. But I just want to show you the difference between his complexion and his. You see? You can clearly see the darkness of the Indian. And then we got American Indian and spells. I don't know this one right here. We didn't have no info, but that's why I put them together though. So kind of compare. Again, Osage in the middle. Continue. We have an Osage chief here in the middle. And it's interesting. Look, first of all, look at the hats of you see that? That's kind of cool. And then look at the hand painted in his face. I mean, what's the difference? Like, if you look at the Khoisan people of Africa, these are the oldest people of Africa. They look more Asian and more light-skinned than this person, guys. The Khoisan, a lot of them look more Asian, lighter than a lot of the American Indians I'm showing you guys right here. So, what's the difference? What I'm saying, we got even though these images I got are not showing all the phenotypes. These are just the ones that were accepted to be Indians by the late 1800s, right? A lot of other Indians had been reclassified, right? And so here we have another image. We have Osage Quapaw sisters to the right. We have a Papago Indian girl in the middle, and we got a Narragansett Indian. Check it out. Check this out, guys. So we got Stone Hatchet, aka Cassius Arthur Brown, and I'm gonna do a follow-up videos on him to see what I can find and do the genealogy and all that. But check out the curls he got, the locks. And so like when I'm showing you guys these black Europeans, right, with locks and hair going down like this, you guys like, oh, that's it, y'all didn't have hair like that. Like, this is what I've been trying to tell you guys. Who do you think they're mimicking when they're wearing these wigs and court and all that. These white folks wearing these white woolly type looking curl locks, right, going down. That's. This is what I'm trying to say. So see, this is an Indian though, a Narragansett, right? I mean, we got to know his whole genealogy, but I just want to show you that, right? This is what they're leaving out, right? And then we got an Osage man to the left, and possible Ute man on the right. And it's funny because they got the little top hats, just like the Peruvian Indians. And I noticed that a lot of people in Asia also wear the little top hats and stuff, and in other parts of the world actually. And here we got on the left Osage brave and a squaw and his wife from the late 1800s. In the middle we got some Apache Indians, and on the right Hummingbird, he's a Kiowa chief, zooming into the Osage. There you go. You see that? Osage brave squaw, late 1800s, and then we got Apache Indians. Look at that. Look how dark complexion they are, man. Right? No matter what you think of what they look, their phenotype or hair, you can't deny that these people were dark and they don't look. Most of the people today representing all these people are much lighter. A lot of them look a lot more Asian for some reason, or just very different, or very European, right? They look very European. They don't look like these people. All right, you got to have perspective. We're going to read about what happened to the Osage, and here we have a representation of the people they're doing that to. So when you are reading of what they're doing to these people and murdering them for the oil and all that, you got to understand, man, this is dark copper colored people. Look at that. You see him? Go to Jamaica, he'll say, "Oh, that's an Arawak. Oh, that's a Jamaican." I went to Jamaica. I saw so many people like that. I grew up in Boston. I saw so many black folks that look like that. I'm in Costa Rica. I see so many people, dark complexion people. They call Afro Costa Rican or whatever, or just Indians right here. That's what they look like. You understand what I'm trying to show you here? I'm like being really serious. I'm breaking spells. I'm hope you are understanding and helping you get rid of stereotypes and prejudices and all that. You guys got to stop all that. Got to know people's genealogy and know everything about them, not conjecture. We can't be as bad as the hijack. We can't be like the hijack. And that's two bears right here. Look at that. Look how he looks. Look at his complexion. And a lot of these Indians, they straighten their hair. They might have had more frizzly or woolly or curly hair, and they did straighten their hair, but they had all types of hair, guys. Again, we're not getting all the images because a lot of the other images, the people already been declared Negroes or colored or free people of color, and they're living in colonies or towns already, dressing like the Europeans and all that have been, all that assimilating, right? It's dangerous to be Indian at some point for a lot of black folks, and they were getting this franchise or being told they were slaves only or for Africans, and they're forgetting their heritage. Either way, let's continue. We have here a savage. It says a savage, aka non pawale. Okay, we showed that earlier. That I didn't write the savage thing. That's what the description said. I shouldn't even put that. I don't know why I put that. I should have just put his name. And then to the right, you see how dark this person is. This is Comanche. You gotta understand, guys, the Indians in the Southwest, and like Comanches, Apaches, they lived in the open desert in the sun all day. They were very dark. The Maricopa, so many from that area. They were very dark complexion, and a lot of the eastern woodland people, or Asia, they a lot of them live in woods, very forested areas. A lot of them were lighter copper, not necessarily. So that's what we got to break our prejudice and stereotypic concepts, that we have ingrained in us, and just try to understand people as a whole, very specific in detail, without judgment. Okay, here we have a drawing of Chief Hone Nako Osage. Look at that. Look how they drew him. That's really that looks like very copper red, right? Look at that. Okay. And then we got some, again, single pictures. These are all Osages, just to a little recap, right? Yeah, the Osage. So this is what we're going to be talking about. right? See, okay, I don't know if I showed that. Oh, check out this one. This is Osage Chief Pawuska. Pawuska. And we saw, look at that. Don't it look like that could be like the quarter? You know how they got the quarter, the Indian and the quarter, right? Or the 5 cents. I forget which one it is. And then, or, I mean, if you paint this with white hair and put pale skin on him, you can say that's George Washington. I swear, this is what I'm trying to tell you guys. It's all about stereotypes we got ingrained in us. We got to break out of that. This can easily be a depiction of George Washington if we put white hair, pale skin, right? Oh yeah, that's George Washington. Or that can say, oh, that's John Quincy Adams. And you put in an engraving, and then you forget who it really is. Oh, that's a white man. Nah, look, man, that's an Indian, and that's a copper-colored Indian right here, or Osage. All right, you see. This is what I'm trying to show you guys. I hope I'm clear. You guys see who we're going to be talking about? Here's an Osage Indian dancer that says Crazy Horse Dance Hall. Oh, Gray Horse. This is from 1912. Okay. Yeah, these are like survivors of all the crazy stuff. And here goes Shaq again. Baby Shaq. Pawuska? Pawuska. Yeah, let me see. Oh, yeah. Check this one out. These are Osage men. From 1865, Sundown Scared Up, Buffalo White Robe, and Yellow Horse. That was their names. All right, let me zoom into look at this guy. Come on now, guys, look. Come on. Look at that. What are we talking about? We're talking about deep copper-colored people, copper-colored tribes. Osage, huh? Look how they got numbered, man. Like, they got numbers on their forehead. What's going on here? 1, 2, 3, 4. Do you guys see that? I don't know if they did that in the beginning, like in their heads, or after they took the picture and they marked them. All right. And again, here's some other ones. What's up, man? What's up, man? You chilling? You got the Wakanda necklace? Wakanda forever, huh? You see where they get the Wakanda necklace for the Black Panther? You guys see that? That's what I'm trying to tell you. All right, wake up. Wake up. Remember who you are. So we're going to be talking about what happened to the Osage, the murders of the Osage. So remember they were saying how they were taking advantage of their royalties that they were collecting from oil and how they were being relocated and all this other stuff. We were just in the beginning. We're going to find out what happened to these people right here. People that look like him. These people right here. Osage. Osage, okay? Let's go back to the book now. So the Osage murders involved one particular family whose members found themselves experiencing sudden changes from their traditional lifestyle due to the windfall wealth from oil royalties, caught in the dangerous void between traditional tribal ways and the materialism of America's roaring 20s. This family and other oil-rich Osage became targets of hideous murder plots. Listen, the worst of American capitalism, murderous avarice. Remember why this is part of U.S. expansion, right? Because the corporation got legitimacy through the Treaty of Peace and Friendship. They made the corporation a legit entity when it didn't have no legitimacy. You understand? So that there allowed them to do their manifest destiny, their U.S. expansion, take over Indian lands, remove them, all this legally now because of that treaty, because of that status that the corporation was given. All right, so now they're going after these families, oil-rich Osages, right? They're targets of hideous murder plots, and this is the worst of American capitalism. Murderous avarice resulted in the killing of more than a dozen Osage, all related to one family. They were killed for their head rights to oil royalties. Listen, although many people would welcome the wealth from oil revenues on their lands, it brought only heinous destruction to these people and provoked the worst actions that any group of people could do to another. The story began when the United States pressured the Osage at various intervals into signing 3 treaties. There you go again with the treaties, forcing them, right, involving the cession of approximately 100 million acres of land. Wow, they took all their land. Listen, guys. The Indians received $166,300 in livestock, horses, farming equipment, money, and annuities. So they got something for that. They got all these things. But you guys think that's worth it? Like selling that much land of your homeland, like, you know, because that's priceless to me. The first treaty in 1808 surrendered over 50 million acres in present-day Missouri and Arkansas. And the treaty in 1818 ceded a small section of 1.8 million acres in what is today western Arkansas and eastern Oklahoma. Finally, in 1825, the Osage signed a treaty with the corporation, right, the United States Corporation, to cede all their lands. Wow. Why were they doing this? More than 45 million acres in Missouri, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. By this treaty, they agreed to move reservation in southern Kansas. They agreed to move there, right? The rush of additional settlers to Kansas and Nebraska and the popular movement for territories forced the federal government to take away the Osage Reservation 1870. Wow, that's dirty. So you see what they did? They moved them. They took all their ancestral lands. They made them literally sign off, sell the land, right? Sign it off to them. And then they told them, hey, go to Kansas. We got a little spot for your little reservation. They went there. And then they wanted that land too. And eventually they moved them from there. Damn, man. Like, isn't that, like, listen and remember, right? Remember who we talking about. Remember who we talking about. Couple colored tribes of America. Right? So it has a very deep, what's going on is very deep. It's not just about, it's literally to exterminate and erase the Indian, right? Manifest destiny. In return, the United States compensated the Osage, who purchased a new reservation located in the northeast area of Indian Territory. In 1871, the Osage moved to their new reservation, which consisted of 1,470,559 acres, purchased from the Cherokee. They had to buy it from the so-called Cherokee, huh? The new reservation was bordered by the 96th meridian on the east, the Arkansas River and the former Muskogee Creek Nation on the south and west, and the Kansas border on the north. The new land satisfied the Osage, and fortunately, it remained unwanted by European settlers who could not sink their plows into the thickly wooded area of hard oaks and strands of hickory. In many parts, scrub oaks known as blackjack trees crowded the land, interspersed with streams and open meadows dividing rocky hills and the blackjacks. Stretching to the west, thick prairie grass took over, and in other areas, tall, blue-stemmed grass up to 14 inches high covered the reservation. Throughout the entire new Osage Reservation, deer, turkey, quail, beaver, otter, raccoon, coyotes, timber wolf, and buffalo, farther to the west, fed off the land and the woods. All right, that sounds like a nice place, right? At least for them. The land was suited only for difficult homesteading, and no one guessed that large pools of oil rested below the surface of the new reservation. Uh-oh, just like the so-called Creek people, right? The five civilized tribes, how they were put in the worst lands, the lots they were given, and then all of a sudden there was oil found, and they became rich, and they started abusing them. We read chapter 1, what happened to what is it, Jackson Bennett or Jackson Barnett, right? In the first video, that was dirty what they did to him. What happened to Sarah Rector, the richest colored girl, right? And that, but she was an Indian, right? And how they also, anyways. So, following their removal of this land, the Osage began to reconstruct their nation and government during late 19th century, when more European settlers expressed interest in the dark, rich soil of eastern Indian Territory. Huh. In 1875, James Bigheart became the appointed Osage chief. Some support from the tribe, he drafted the early tribal legislation to establish law and order. Although the United States did not recognize the Osage accomplishments, in 1881, the tribe elected Bigheart the first chief, a post he held until the turn of the 20th century. These busy years involved oil and mineral exploration, and Bigheart signed the first oil and gas lease, enabling the Osage to begin accumulating oil wealth. From 1900 until June 28, 1906, when the Allotment Act was signed, no formal Osage government existed, although the old constitution of the 1880s remained on the records. Under Section 9 of the new act, the tribe elected a principal chief, an assistant principal chief, and 8 members of the Osage Tribal Council every 2 years. Early towns on the reservation, such as Greyhorse and Fairfax. All right, we just saw a picture of Greyhorse. That's where all the people were assembled, right, next to this hut. Yeah, you saw they were all Swarty. You saw they were all Swarty Indians. So again, the reservations such as Greyhorse and Fairfax, which had approximately 2,000 residents, brought the Santa Fe Railroad to the area. In future years, the thriving town of Barnesdall, formerly called Bigheart, attracted the Missouri Pacific Railroad. The following years were devoted to farming, mostly among the mixed bloods. Mixed bloods, and intermarried individuals. Now they're marrying outside the nation, right? And the Little Osage, a full-blood band who had purchased farms from European settlers living near the Kansas border. The federal government directed the Osage and other Indians in agriculture. Thus, farming dominated life on the Osage reservation, despite the fact that most of the land was inhospitable to the plow, until the unexpected discovery of oil spawned instant towns such as Avant, Okisa, Olanger, Hurd, Osage, Personia, Foraker, Gainola, Frankfurt, Burbank, Pure, Nelogany, Persian, Greyhorse, Remington, Hula, and Wild Horse. Actually, many of these sites operated as lively oil fields, camps for several years. After World War I, the decade of the 20s, an increase in wildcatting for oil produced notorious towns like Denoya, first called Whiz Bang, Talco, Talent, Apperson, Cooper, Copper, Carter, Nine, Lynham, Atlantic Field, Naval Reserve, Webb City, Hardy, Bowring, Big Bertha, Phillips, Number 2, and Little Chief. The oil boom began in 1895 when a New Englander named Henry Foster moved from Rhode Island to Independence, Kansas. Becoming familiar with the Indian settlement in the area, he applied to the Secretary of the Interior for a lease of the Osage Reservation. While waiting for the lease to be approved, Foster died, and his brother, Edwin, assumed the obligations and pursued the rumor that oil existed beneath the Osage Reservation. On March 16, 1896, Edwin B. Foster and the Osage National Council formed in 1881, represented by James Bigheart, Principal Chief, Saucy Chief, President of the Council, and several other Osage signed their names to lease or mark the documents with their X's, right? So how many are these people that are signing now are now part of what they would call mixed bloods or the intermarried people, So let's go back just to look at this image. It says here, oil gusher in Oklahoma, courtesy, Western History Collections, University of Oklahoma Library, right? So when they were finding the little oil there, right? So Foster's lease included oil and gas mining over the entire Osage Reservation for a period of 10 years. But the tribe sublet mostly the eastern half. As part of this blanket lease, Foster agreed to pay royalty of 10% of all crude pumped from the reservation and $50 a year per gas well, as long as the well was used. The market value of oil at that place of production determined the royalty to be paid to the national treasurer of the Osage Nation. In less than a month, Saucy Chief led a protest and filed a complaint with the Secretary of the Interior. He contended that the full Osage Council had not met when the lease had been presented, and that the contract lacked the approval of the majority of the Osage tribe. Like I was just saying, why would they be doing? Who's actually conducting these deals, these treaties, these signing these things, when they know that the whole council was not there? So when the real people actually come, who actually have control and have word, they're like, nah, we wasn't there. The majority of the Osages, we wasn't there. This contract is null. We didn't authorize it. Everybody was not there. The whole council. Well, you cannot decide for everybody. I told you guys, there's funny stuff going on even between their own people. This is how stuff happens. Humans be selling out each other. Humans be selling out their own people, and then you got people who have offsprings mixing in with, and then their offspring become cheese, and they got a little power, and they become part of the council. And so these are the people who are really doing this. But look at the truth right here. They're telling you that they're doing deals. Somebody in the tribe is doing deals with the settlers, right? When the whole council's not even there to approve of that. The Osage agents supervised an investigation into the matter and reported that, listen, two white men, look at this, guys. This is what I'm saying. I didn't even read. I didn't know this were going to say this. So when they actually looked into who's actually making these deals, right? Signing these treaties or these contracts, they found out that it was two white men that had taken about 50 Osage across the Arkansas River to Cleveland and Oklahoma Territory, where the white men plied the Osage with whiskey. Listen, they gave them whiskey, they got them drunk, and induced them to sign a protest against the Foster lease. Wow. When the first oil well on the Osage land was drilled in 1897, there was no immediate confirmation of the future large oil holdings on this land. 2 years later, Foster's Osage Oil Company drilled on the eastern side of the Osage Reservation near Bartlesville, a town in the Cherokee Nation. A limit of 50 barrels pumped daily discouraged Foster, convincing him that the well's production was not commercially profitable when measured against the cost of drilling, and forcing him to cap the well. Falling deeper into debt for his operational costs, Foster sold more stock in his company and continued to wildcat. The second well brought good results, and though several experimental wells that followed produced dry or nearly dry holes, the seventh well struck the best results in the entire Kansas Indian Territory oil field. Wildcatting elsewhere, Foster virtually ignored the possibility of oil on the Osage Reservation, pursuing black gold instead. In 1900, he arranged for a sublease on the reservation and large land blocks after the entire reservation was surveyed, in tracts measuring 1/2 mile in width and 3 miles in length, extending east to west. Each rectangular tract received a number and subletters leased in the eastern part of the Osage on a bonus and royalty basis. The conditions required payment to Foster at interest of 1/8, later 1/6 of the royalty, and a bonus of $1 to $5 per acre. In the following year, Foster consolidated his interests to form the Indian Territory Illuminating Oil Company, Illuminati. You guys see that? Illuminating, or Illuminati. Illuminati, Look at that. I'm going to just highlight that. Illuminati. The Indian Territory Illuminati Oil Company, which he incorporated at Trenton, New Jersey, with a capital base of $3 million. The ITIO owned and controlled all the rights and properties of the Osage and Phoenix oil companies, and it supervised the subleasing of the Osage Reservation, okay? The ITIO, the Indian Territory Illuminati Oil Company. Wow. A growing number of oil strikes convinced the Alameda Oil Company to finance the first well of a sublease on Lot 40, and this encouraged Foster's ITIO to drill additional wells. Shortly thereafter, Foster's company announced plans to drill wells at the rate of one every 20 days. Standard Oil Company promised to buy the crude at its refinery at Neodesha, Kansas, for 88 cents per barrel. And ITIO also announced the leases covering approximately 6,000 acres had been sold to New York and St. Louis companies. See how they're just selling all this to everybody else. And what are they doing for the Indians? It's coming out of their land. Like, what are you giving back to them? In 1902, the rail shipments of crude oil to the Neodesha refinery amounted to 37,000 barrels from 13 wells, 6 of which had been drilled that year. In January 1903, Foster's ITIO reported that it had its subleasee had drilled 30 wells. 17 wells struck oil, 2 produced gas, and 11 became dry holes. A year later, 361 wells rose among the blackjacks and blue stem grass on the Osage. 243 pumped oil, 21 produced gas, and 97 were dry. You guys here, they're making money, man. By 1906, throughout the eastern Osage Reservation, 783 wells became a part of the countryside. 544 producing oil, 41 yielding gas, and 198 proven dry. In that year alone, the wells on the reservation yielded more than 5 million barrels of oil annually, and ITIO had disbursed $2,686,627 from the blanket lease to the Osage. The eastern half netted approximately 7,000 leased acres of pumping wells, 165,000 acres of non-oil producing acres, and 430,000 acres of unleased land. The turn of the century brought a tremendous push for Indian territory by so-called whites eager to control the new state for its farming and grazing potential. David Payne and his raiders from Kansas had ignited a boomer movement advocating white settlement in Indian territory, the last vestige for a total Indian homeland. Rumors of oil and increasing gushers turned the heads of European opportunists toward the Osage, as many European men married Osage women, okay? You see? Listen to what's going on. This is what I'm trying to tell you. These avaricious so-called whites or Europeans and an increasing number of mixed bloods pressured the federal government to extend the allotment program of land to the Osage, for they and the 5 civilized tribes had been left out of the original Dawes Land Allotment Act in 1887. The land push to civilize the Indians had begun. 3 years later, only 13 reservations remain in Indian territory, and the bureaucrats aimed their efforts at statehood. To escape allotment, the Osage tribe sent a delegation to Washington with a memorial to the House of Representatives dated January 25, 1888, requesting that House Bill 1277 be amended to exclude the Osage tribe from allotment. Although the Dawes legislation originally excluded the Osage, outsiders and mixed bloods began influencing the Osage to make individual land claims of the reservation. You see what they were doing? Just like we read already, that they were trying to individualize these people, make them feel like, hey, why are you worried about your whole people? Just worry about yourself, man. Just make your own money, sell your own lot, you know? Make your own money. Don't worry about the whole tribe. Remember, these people were very family oriented, we read earlier. And see what they're doing to them? And again, who's influencing them? Who's influencing them? Outsiders and mixed bloods began influencing the Osage to make individual land claims of the reservation. By 1892, most of the Osage favored establishing individual claims of land, compelling the federal government to send the Cherokee Commission, officially called the Jerome Commission, to Pawhuska, the capital of the Osage Nation, to supervise allotment of the Osage and to sell the surplus land. A large number of tribal members, mostly mixed bloods, you see, favored allotment. They want the land to be splitted eventually and sold, and people to get greedy and become wealthy, like seek material wealth and not the betterment of their whole people, their whole tribe, and their family, right? So who's doing that? Mostly mixed bloods. And these are your chiefs. These are the descendants of the chiefs who kept mixing more to the point where they look literally, they are European today. And I'm going to show you guys that because I almost got the tree done with Chief Glenn Wallace. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. These so-called mixed bloods. They favored allotment, not the rest of the people, not the original people, but the full bloods, right? The full bloods firmly resisted. They resisted. Only the mixed bloods and the outsiders. Listen to, this is what happened to most Indian nations, guys, especially in regard to the existing members on the tribal rolls, claiming, the full blood and the people on the rolls, they were like, nah, man. They were claiming that many did not belong and should not benefit from the allotment. The full blood Indians saying, they not Indians, but they not Indians. They not us. Why should they benefit? Why are they benefiting from our land, our stuff? This is the full blood saying this, right? This is the full bloods saying this, right? This is the full bloods saying this, right? They not us. Us who? We. That's why I say everybody's we is not the same. Everybody's us is not the same. So because these mixed bloods might say, but we like this. We want this. We who? We full bloods or we mixed bloods, right? Just like when you saying we, us. You gotta think about that. Just because you're saying it, you got a whole picture in your head, it's not gonna be the same as the next person next to you is we and us, what they're picturing. All kinfolk ain't kinfolk, remember, and all white folks are not the same either, and they don't have the same origin. We gotta stop going by color, right? When we say it, when we thinking we. All right. And we go back to the book. So they're doing this. The full bloods are saying nope. They're not even Indians. Why are they benefiting from it, right? The full blood faction received support from the Cherokee, whose many traditional members opposed allotment, whose many full bloods too on the Cherokees also opposed it, so-called Cherokees. Furthermore, the Osage held ambitions to become the sixth civilized tribe, wanting to join the Cherokee, Muskogee Creek, Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Seminole in hopes of converting Indian territory into an Indian state. That was their plan. The Osage really wanted the full bloods, right? Hooking up with the other so-called full bloods in those times, right? Of the five civilized tribes to create the Indian state. Some 279 Osage signed a proposition indicating this desire to the Cherokee Commission and opposed ceding land to on any terms. On the Osage Reservation, the tribe experienced factionalism, pitting tribal members against each other. You see what's going on? The hijacks took over, guys. This division had existed since the 1860s. So, all right. And I'm showing you images of the Indians at those times, right? This is when it's all happening, right? Who's the full bloods? Who's the mixed bloods? With mixed bloods standing against full bloods. Listen, see, I ain't making this up. As the two sides clashed over the issue of assimilation into the white society or European society, right? Or retaining traditions. Wow, this is deep. See, because I know the whole background context of, you guys got to understand how deep this is, man. Because this is literally, because you're asking, so what happened? Why did they look different today? Why do they look like, what happened? There's certain people being disfranchised, guys. and other people being franchised, being given a status. Say, hey, now you the Indian. In the 1920s, the tribal role classified the people in two groups: those who had half Osage blood or more, and those who had less than half Osage blood. You see that? The classifications had to be approved by the Assistant Secretary of the Interior. Wow, separating people. Does that make sense? If they're all Osage, would that make sense if they were really all Osage? Right? Obviously, a lot of them ain't. If they have less than half, come on now. As the number of intruders, just like Glenna Wallace, less than, way less than half, as the number of intruders in the Osage Reservation grew, another effort was made to allot the reservation when the Osage Commission was formed on May 18, 1894, consisting of James S. Hook as chairperson, John A. Gorman, and John L. Tullis. Under instructions approved by the Secretary of the Interior, a full council of Osage agreed to any negotiations with the approval of a majority of male adults. The Osage Commission was advised not to use any pressure in order to obtain Osage approval of the allotment, but this effort failed because the full-blood contingent disapproved of the tribal role. Okay, they don't even like the roles. This is what I'm saying. Those roles are hijacked too, guys. The full-bloods did not want to be in the role. They disapproved of the tribal roles, saying it consisted of too many mixed bloods. Man, body bag for the illusion. Yo, shout out to Drop, guys. Like, listen, guys, this is deep. Apply that to every role. Apply that to every role now. There's too many mixed bloods in them. This is the full blood saying that. Say, nah, we're not. You're making most. You're talking about the guys who, the offspring of the people, and the foreigners and everybody who came into the tribe and got adopted. That's what you're talking about in these roles. All right. Now, this doesn't mean there ain't full bloods. There are people that have a lot of Indian blood, but in general, many mixed bloods. That's what they're telling you right here, and apply that to almost every role. This is why when they say, "Oh, you can't be part of the tribe if you're not on this particular role at this particular year," they do that when you're trying to apply to these federally recognized tribes, guys, because they know the game. They know that the majority of these people on these roles are mixed bloods. This is from the full bloods themselves. This is from the Indians, right? From the tribes, right? They're saying that about their own people, right? Their own roles. They're saying, an ultimatum to purge certain undeserving names from the tribal annuity roll. They said, you got to take out some of these names. Some of these people are not us. And to purge certain undeserving names. Okay, it says, in the following year, the federal government decided that this issue needed to be resolved before further action could proceed. The Osage tribe argued about the legal status of its membership, yet it had the foresight to establish laws affecting the business, membership, and wills of its tribal members. Under Article 5 of the Constitution dated 1881 to 1882, a tribal judge held the authority to supervise the heirship of property being divided equally among a man's widow and children when they became 18 years old for males and 15 for females. If the wife remarried and died, then the estate remained with the first set of children. So that's kind of interesting right here, this part, not to go off subject too much, that they would give the females the land or their birthright at a younger age than the males. That kind of shows that in general, women might be a little more mature than men at that age. In general, maybe. I'm just saying, this ain't to be a feminist or nothing like that. So hey, I'm not trying to create feminists either. Like, guys, I'm just saying, because it kind of makes sense. You see some young dudes at 18, 19, you see young ladies at that age being a little more mature and kind of think about life differently, right? Anyways, so maybe that's it, maybe that's not. Maybe I'm just talking. Let's keep going. It says numerous Osage mixed bloods had already assimilated into white society. So many of these so-called mixed bloods, right, Of course, they assimilated to white society. You mean they assimilated with their people, right? They're mixed bloods, right? So they just got together with their cousins and uncles, the so-called white ones, right? European ones. Again, mixed bloods. How much mix are these people? Believe it or not, a lot of these so-called mixed bloods are literally almost full Europeans, like Glenna Wallace, Chief Glenna. I'm going to show you guys. So they were assimilating, of course, with white society, right? These mixed bloods. And they had a business interest in improving their lands or their pocketbooks. All about the money bag now, huh? The Indians weren't like that. We didn't know about ownership or wealth in that way. Wealth was different. It meant health, your land, your tribe. That was your wealth, man. The full blood seemed regressive and appeared content to live in camps and villages in the south central and southwestern part of the Osage Reservation, where they practiced tribal customs and lived communally. Life seemed to be changing about them as other tribes were undergoing allotment and European settlers were pushing into Indian territory. Again, all part of the U.S. expansion manifest destiny because of the legitimacy this corporation of the United States got after the Treaty of Peace and Friendship with Morocco. And the traditional Osage struggled, right, because of that, eventually. From the time of their move from Kansas until about 1906, smallpox, pneumonia, and tuberculosis reduced the tribal population from nearly 4,000 to fewer than 2,000 members. The control of influx of non-Osage, right? The tribal constitution read that any white man or citizen of the United States of the corporation, right, to marry an Osage woman shall first be required to make known his intentions to the National Council by applying for a license. They had to do that and take an oath to support the Constitution and abide by the laws of the Osage Nation. Children of mixed parentage, becoming mixed bloods, shall have equal right in proportion to their number, with the full-blood Indians and all the benefits to be derived from this Treaty of 1868 and all former treaties with the Osage. Wow. Do you guys see? So these so-called mixed bloods were getting the same benefits as the full bloods. But you got to understand, eventually foul play happened. People don't all go by the rules, guys. And unfortunately, all the bad things are happening more to the so-called full bloods. And the mixed bloods end up benefiting and becoming the so-called Indian more. And they keep mixing more. That's the worst part about it. The mixed bloods' interest and allotment prevailed over the interest of the stubborn full-blood faction. On November 28th, so they won. The full bloods won. They got what they wanted to do with the actual Indians. Listen to this. This is why you got to understand what it's telling you here. The actual Indians, the full bloods, their effort failed. That's why you don't see them anymore, guys. That's why you see a whole bunch of different people looking like Europeans and foreigners and all this other stuff. And they don't look colored tribes of America, like the 1828 Webster's Dictionary said. On November 28, 1904, the Business Committee, also called the National Council, consisting of a principal chief and 8 councilmen, passed a resolution to appoint a delegation of 9 persons, an interpreter, and a local agent to represent the tribe in Washington and advocate allotment. To prove their intention, the Osage passed a bill at the final general tribal election in February 1906, which the delegation presented in Washington. The bill represented a compromise of all the tribal factions and was introduced in the House of Representatives. After several amendments, Congress approved the bill on June 28th as the Osage Allotment Act of 1906, all right? That's when it took place. That's what they called it. They won. They're implementing it now. An important provision allowed the Secretary of the Interior to grant competency at his discretion to those Osage who could read and write sufficiently to conduct business, you see? So now they were choosing who's competent and who's not competent to make decisions on behalf of the Osage. Now, remember, in part one, chapter one of this reading of this book, we read about Jackson Barnett and how he was labeled incompetent and they took so much advantage of him, guys. So you got these corporate agents, right, that are now so-called mixed bloods, right? And now they're deciding, along with the corporation, as we just read here, by the Secretary of the Interior, right? Right, the Secretary of the Interior. He's not even an Indian. He's the one granting competency, right? To those who are his friends in the tribe, these are the competent ones. These are not competent ones. You know, who must be the non-competent ones, right? The more copper-colored ones, huh? Tribal members could sell or lease their lands, except for their homestead allotments of 160 acres each, which would stay in trust status for 25 years. To help establish the membership, the principal chief had 3 months after the passage of the act to file with the Secretary of the Interior a list of individuals fraudulently claiming to be tribal members. All right, fraudulently. The real membership list could not include the name of any person or his descendants placed on the roll prior to December 31st, 1881, when the Osage adopted their constitution. During the following weeks, approximately 160 enrollment applications flooded into the National Council. The Osage Allotting Commission, composed of Charles E. McChesney, Cassius R. Peck, and Black Dog, Black Dog, Black Dog, Black Dog, began to allot the Osage Reservation into 160-acre parcels to the 2,229 tribal members. Immediately thereafter, tribal members complained to them about fraudulent members. See what happened? And the procedure for allotment. There was a lot of corruption going on while they're doing this, man. Finally, the tribe devised a lottery plan, and Interior Secretary Ethan A. Hitchcock approved it. The tribe held a public drawing on July 8th to 9th at the Opera House in Pahuska. Allotment Commissioner McChesney reported to the Commissioner of Indian Affairs that a full-blood boy was blindfolded, and revolved a keg called the name wheel, drawing there from at each revolution a card containing the name of some member of the tribe. Wow. A mixed-blood boy was blindfolded, and from a revolving key called the number wheel, he drew at each revolution a card containing a number to correspond to the name drawn. The lottery attracted many mixed bloods. Wow. But the full bloods expressed little interest and stayed away. You see, they're like, man, they're not even participating in this unsanctioned thing. They didn't approve of any of this, you know? They're like, man, we're not even participating in that. So obviously, if only the mixed bloods show up and, they're gonna make sure and influence who's getting picked, guys, and care. And then the other people are gonna look like, oh, they don't care. They're incompetent. They don't care. So let's just take all their land. So the census for 1910 revealed that the Osage belonged to 11 tribal bands. In the end, the commission distributed a total of 1,465,380.56 acres, with each Osage receiving 657.41 acres, to do with as he or she pleased, at least as far as the surface rights were concerned. Tribal members held all subsurface or mineral rights in common, but each Osage had a head right, meaning that he or she would receive an equal share of all mineral income. The tribe declared it illegal to sell such head rights. The Allotment Commission completed the distribution by 1908, and on March 31st, 1909, it was discontinued. The Osage tribal roll for disbursing royalties contained names of those members on the list as of January 1st, 1906, and all children born to them by July 1907. In addition, non-enrolled Osage children of white fathers, right? Listen, or Europeans were included with no distinction made based on sex, age, or degree of Osage blood, right? They got included. Needless to say, Pahuska became a bustling site. It became known as the seat of the Osage Agency, and the full-bloods lined up there to receive their quarterly monies on the first and second days of the payment periods. The agency paid the mixed bloods 2 or 3 days later. All of these transactions kept 8 men busy for 4 or 5 days. Meanwhile, waiting like hungry dogs, merchants, and white opportunists, right? Europeans looked forward to doing business with the Indians, and creditors made sure to collect their full payments before the Indians spent all of their money. So you see what they're saying? So as soon as the Indians are getting their royalties, right? And talking about the full bloods, right? They're getting their money. Yeah, they're getting a little wealthy off of this. Okay. They got to give them something, right? Or else they'll rebel, right? But either way, they're being set up. Now they got these people like stalking them, like scamming them, making them targets of their money. Like literally, like I said here, taking all their money, like creditors, they collected all their payments before they even spent it. Many bootleggers who sold whiskey illegally to the Osage later claimed they made their entire living off the Indians. Bootlegging, huh? Who was that? A lot of the mafias, right? A lot of these, the Kennedys and all these people bootlegging. A lot of these mafia families, a lot of these families, rich families today in the U.S. were bootleggers. And I bet you they were doing it with the Indians too, a lot of them, just like this. See, they're getting the Indians drunk and making all their money of giving them poison, making them spend their money on liquor. A general estimate on monies paid to the Osage, including payments for grazing permits, pipeline damages, and other revenues in addition to oil and gas, from July 1st, 1904 to May 13th, 1905, was said to be 108,567 in the form of gas and oil royalties. In the following years, royalty money flowed with the oil. In 1917, a headright was worth $2,719. In 1920, the amount spiraled upward to $8,090. An average Osage family of 5 had an astounding income of $40,450 annually. In 1925, the same family received more than $65,000 per year. So that's a lot of money back then, right? In comparison, on average, other tribes averaged less than $200 in annual income in 1928. So the Osage are making big money, right? Compared to other tribes that have oil too. So they're being targeted. Imagine you got these Indians walking around with mad money, guys. You know the settlers are gonna want that. The hijack's gonna want that. Such unimaginable wealth enticed the whites to get at Osage oil money. Okay? They became targets. One full-blood named Don Dickinson. Why is his name Dickinson? Had a typical experience. He met a white woman. Just like Jackson Barnett, right? Just like the first part we read, right? He met a white woman, and after a whirlwind courtship lasting just 1 week, he married her. 3 days later, she left him and took $100,000 in alimony with her. Wow. They played. See, she got helped. She got help at the same. She probably paid mad people with that money, right? Her lawyer, everybody who helped her, they were plotting already. They're like, don't worry. Legally, if he says yes, legally, they made him sign mad things, alimony, all that. She's like, okay, in a week, I'm gone, man. Taking my money, I'm gone. And that's what she did, guys. This was really happening, man. Upon the deaths of tribal elders, so when the full blood and the actual elders, the ones people respected, when they start dying, head rights passed on to descendants who legally inherited claims to the Osage mineral rights in common. In one case, the respected elder Lizzie Q. Kyle had inherited 8 head rights. People speculated that upon her death, all of the 8 head rights passed to her last living daughter, Molly Burghardt. All of the unfortunate deaths aroused suspicion. Listen, now they're showing up. Now they're starting to die. Now all these full bloods are starting to end up, passing away, right? So this reminds me of the movie, recent movie again. I mentioned it the other day. Leonardo DiCaprio, Flowers of the Moon, or something like that, right? How they were doing the exact same thing to those people over there, marrying in, murdering them, taking the money that the husbands or the European settlers, making the other people incompetent, taking over literally the whole identity, everything. Like everything that we're reading here, guys. You see, they did this everywhere. You gotta understand why, how people now, why people look a certain way in the federally recognized, why they federally recognize, why others are not. How people got disfranchised by color and all this. Like this is really happening, guys. Right? So after all these deaths aroused suspicion and prompted a federal investigation, but an Osage family had been eliminated. A whole family got eliminated, guys, just like the movie, disrupting the community and stressing the destruction caused by the intrusion of another culture. In 1905, Congress received pressure from oil companies to not renew Foster's blanket lease, which would not expire until March 1906. Several Osage leaders also traveled to Washington to voice concerns over the renewal of the lease. In addition, other oil companies and individuals interested in getting into the lucrative oil business claimed that Foster monopolized the Osage oil interests, thus violating the federal antitrust laws. After investigating the complaints on March 3rd, 1905, near the end of the session, Congress compromised by renewing the Foster lease and all the subleases made by ITIO on a total area of 680,000 acres on the eastern side of the Osage Reservation. All original provisions of the Foster lease were made applicable for another 10 years, with the exception that the gas well royalty was increased from $50 to $100 for each well. The fate of the western half of the Osage Reservation remained undetermined until 1912. The rush for oil land and the Osage area pressured the tribal government and the tribal members, and havoc abounded. In one situation, the Barnesdale Oil Company cut the fence of T.J. Leahy, a mixed blood Alati, who complained that workers from the oil company trespassed across his farm and hauled lumber to build an oil derrick. Filled with anger, Leahy removed the lumber and repaired his fence. The oil drillers asked Barnesdale Superintendent Hugh Pitzer for written permission to cut the fence and to haul lumber again for their well, and Leahy obtained arrest warrants for the oil workers. This conflict of interest went to court, and the ruling favored the rights of the mixed blood over the leasing rights of the oil company. Several months prior to the Barnesdale incident, Leahy met with other mixed bloods, who wanted to protect their interests. In January 1911, they formed the Osage Protective Association. Again, these are the mixed bloods. These ain't the full bloods. Remember, the full bloods ain't participating in any of this. So they got with them to block the government's renewal of the Foster lease and to gain support for distribution of mineral estate to tribal members. The OPA worked in Washington to lobby for favorable legislation, albeit to no avail, especially in the interest of the rest of the tribe. Finally, in March 1921, Congress passed a law removing all restrictions on allotments of Osage with less than one-half Indian blood. Known as Public Law 360, the measure included oil, gas, coal, and other minerals, providing that all valid existing oil and gas leases on the 7th day of April 1931 are hereby renewed upon the same terms and extended, subject to all other conditions and provisions thereof, until the 8th day of April 1946, and as long thereafter as oil or gas is found in paying quantities. Trying to gain control over their own affairs, the Osage or Sage Osage or Osage, sorry if I'm saying it wrong, guys, don't, formed a committee and requested a national council to lease the western land on terms that would be more profitable to the tribal members. Royalties of one third, one sixth to the eastern Osage lands were suggested because some Osage farmed and had ranches. The tribe argued that no company should be permitted to drill for oil without written consent from the allotee of the land involved. The Osage or Osage National Council continued to discuss the leasing procedure and decided that a lease should be allocated by sealed bids to be conducted at specific times, with the lease going to the highest bidder. The drilling activities on the reservation increased, and by November 1st, 1921, the Osage Reservation had a total oil production of 20,625,127 barrels. Gas production had reached 33,918,985 cubic feet. Various companies drilled a total of 1,244 oil and gas wells during the fiscal year ending June 30th, 1921, with the total royalties and rentals paid during June 1921 amounting to $544,835. In May 1912, the Osage National Council instructed the principal chief to sign 4 leases that covered most of the western half of the reservation, but the Secretary of the Interior disapproved of this action. On July 13th, the Interior Department decided to try various suggestions for developing the western half of the Osage Reservation. The Department of the Interior recommended that Osage land be leased in parcels of 300 to 5,120 acres, but no individual could have more than 25,000 acres. According to the Interior Department's view regarding the best way to bring revenue to the Osage and other Indians, policy required the United States agents at Pawhuska periodically advertise tracts available for leasing on sealed bids. Anyone wanting to lease a tract had to request in writing that the land be offered for bidding, and each bid required a certified check for 10% of the bonus and the first year's rental. The leases for the western half of the reservation lasted for 10 years from the date of approval by the Department of the Interior, with the stipulation that no lease would extend beyond December 8, 1931. The Interior Department set the royalty amount on gas at 1/6 of the market value at the well, and the petroleum royalty was set at 1/6 of the gross production at the actual market value. While the Osage became rich, listen, the oil companies became wealthier too, all right? The pressure for more individuals and oil companies to work the Osage land brought about the public lease auctions. At these auctions, oil companies could bid for the oil lease rights on each 160-acre tract of land. With huge amounts of money to be made, the amounts paid for these leases increased enormously. In 1912, the first public lease auction was held, and over the following 15 years, an amazing total of 28 auctions occurred. The pace of wildcatting and lease purchasing, as well as the amount of wealth to be had, caught the attention of officials at the Department of the Interior. On November 29, 1922, Interior Secretary Albert Fall informed Commissioner of Indian Affairs Charles Burke that drilling would be halted as much as possible due to the oil situation in this country, referring to the rumors of fraud leading to the Osage murders, okay? The murders, the Elk Hills controversy in California, and the Teapot Dome scandal in Wyoming. The authority and action of the Interior Department affecting so many oil leases provoked attention from the public and other sectors of the federal government. Meanwhile, in Oklahoma, an oil boom was happening. Colonel Ellsworth E. Walters was from nearby the Pawnee town of Skeety, described as just a wide place in the road. All right, a Pawnee town. I showed a couple Pawnees in the images earlier. And he earned fame as the auctioneer. Paid $50 to $100 for his work at an auction, The colonel became a friend of the Osage and received a diamond studded badge worth approximately $3,000 and a large diamond ring for handling mineral leases that made them rich. You hear that? For example, in one auction on June 29th, 1922, the Gypsy Oil Company paid $1,600,000 for a single 160-acre lease. Total sales of that day's auction skyrocketed to almost 11 million. On March 18th, 1924, a company from Bartlesville, Oklahoma, paid a record $1,990,000 for a lease. Guys, wow. The total sales of that auction finished at 14,156,800. This enormous amount of money was divided among the 2,229 Osage head rights. And again, a lot of these mostly mixed bloods. Customarily, Colonel Walters held the auction in the shade of a huge tree at the Osage Agency in Pawhuska, and it achieved fame as the $1,000,000 elm. Sometimes the colonel held the auctions at the Constantine Theater, and later the Kiheka Theater in Pawhuska was used. Trains from Tulsa and Muskogee, Oklahoma, all right, black towns, right, transported oilmen, wildcatters, and their geologists to the auctions, and several came from even farther away. Under the elm, wooden bleachers were constructed for oil barons such as Bill Skelly, E.W. Marlin, Frank Phillips, G.F. Getty, and his son J. Paul Getty. They stayed at Pawhuska's thriving hotels, crowded with oil tycoons and people of all types wanting to get into the oil business, and others like Anna Laura Lowe, wanting to enjoy the wealth. Cocker Rister called Pawhuska the Osage Monte Carlo, and the Petroleum News referred to it as the federal government's biggest gambling center. Wow. Listen to how the whole casino thing is starting off, right? The never-ending flow of money unfortunately attracted the worst types of individuals, just like in today's society. And with them came whiskey, drugs, and trouble, just like in today's society. The roaring 20s for the nation became the troubled 20s of the Osage as the worst kind of greed led to the epidemic of murders that would be called the Osage Reign of Terror, in parentheses. Outside of Pawhuska, the outlaw Al Spencer and his gang of train and bank robbers used the cross timbers of blackjacks as hideouts. In fact, so much crime of all types occurred that one might think the murders of a few Indians might be overlooked. Alarmed and angry. So this was a crazy place. You see, where all this is happening, it turns into a very criminal, violent place. Alarmed and angry again at the prospect, the Osage Tribal Council pointed out to the U.S. Bureau of Investigation that at least 24 Osage had been killed. And this was being ignored. 24, so like 24. For their own protection, many Osage families began stringing electric lights completely around their homes to fend off possible assailants at night. Fearing for their lives, they bought guns and bullets to protect themselves, and some decided to leave the state. Operating quietly to catch the murderers, the Bureau sent agents into Osage country to pose as cowhands and cattle buyers. Soon they discovered that all evidence led to one William K. Hale. You guys hear that? The villain, who proudly named himself King of the Osage. Wow. Originally from Texas, he was working as a cowhand driving cattle through Indian territory to Kansas cow towns when he chose to stay on the reservation. His wife joined him, and in 1900 they lived in a tent during their early days on the Osage Range, grazing and fattening cattle for market. Realizing better opportunities lay in Grey Horse and Osage Town, Hale soon moved there and encouraged his nephew, Ernest Burkhart, to join him. Since he befriended many Osage, his business prospered, and 20 years later he owned or leased many thousands of acres of Osage Range and had accumulated vast holdings of cattle, horses, city real estate, and banking interests. The Osage trusted him He had even been a pallbearer at Anna Brown's funeral. She had held a headright to Osage oil. Pretty Anna Brown, a 35-year-old full blood. Listen, was found dead, guys, on May 28, 1921, at the bottom of a canyon located in a wooded ravine near Grey Horse, with a nearly empty bottle of corn whiskey nearby and a bullet lodged in her head. At the time, she was divorced from Odie Brown, a white man, an ex-cowboy, listen, who lived in Ponca City. Man. An investigation by the U.S. Bureau of Investigation and the ensuing court evidence revealed that the day before her death, two cars had stopped in front of Anna's house. From one car, a tall, spare-built man without a coat said, "Anna, get in." An unidentified red-headed woman sitting in the same car urged Anna to go with them. Testimony at the court disclosed that people in the two cars, now including Anna Brown, partied at one roadhouse and then another. Authorities estimated that she was killed early the following morning. Okay, so I think this is like the movie, right? This is actually the story of the movie, if I'm not mistaken, man. I might be. Yeah, so this is a picture of William K. Hill, self-proclaimed king of the Osages. Wow. Oh, yeah. We're getting the backstory to the movie. In court, the murderer, Kelsey Morrison, confessed to killing Anna Brown and told about the connection with William Hill. "I killed Anna Brown sometime in May 1921, about 2:30 in the morning near Fairfax. I was pretty drunk. Byron Burkhardt and I carried Anna down to the canyon. My ex-wife, Catherine Coe, accompanied us. Then we got her drunk and took her home. We left Anna in the canyon drunk. We got Anna drunk in order to kill her." Morrison described how Byron Burkhardt got the whiskey at Ralston, which they gave to Anna about 11 o'clock at night. "Byron helped me carry Anna to the ravine. She was lying there drunk. We held her up in the sitting position." Morrison admitted that he directed Burkhardt how to hold Anna while he shot her in the head. Immediately afterward, they left, heading for Hale's house. Morrison stated that he and Hale talked about an hour. Hale said he'd wait a few days, and if Anna's body wasn't found, he'd hire some cowhand who would find it. Morrison testified. The agreement was that if Morrison killed Anna Brown, Hale would cancel a $600 debt that Morrison owed him. About 3 weeks later, Hale gave Morrison a car and paid him $1,060, and in 1923, Hale paid Morrison $2,000 for some business property that Morrison owned in Fairfax. Anna had no children. She left an estate of approximately $100,000, half of which would go to her mother, Lizzie K. Kyle, who was very old and lived with Anna's sister, Molly Burkhardt, and Molly's husband, Ernest. Her other heirs included her sisters, Molly, Mrs. Rita Smith, wife of W.E. Smith, and a half-sister named Mrs. Grace Bighart, exactly 60 days after Anna's death. Lizzie Q died at home. All right, so now she's dead, her mom. And her will is stated that her estate of approximately $200,000, in addition to the $50,000 left by Anna Brown, would go to Molly Burkhardt and her children. Actually, the real benefactors were Ernest Burkhardt, you see that? And William Hill, the white man, who had convinced his nephew to marry Molly. Wow. This is the movie, guys. Wow. Another unexplained murder happened in 1921. Joe Greyhorse, an Osage, died very suddenly after making a land deal with William Hill. Then in the following week, Charles Whitehorn, related by blood to the Cow family, was found dead near Pawhuska, his hometown. Friends last saw him alive there about 9 p.m. on May 14th. About May 22nd, his body was found on a hill, a short distance north of town, with 2 bullet holes between his eyes. He obviously had not put up a fight to save his life, and no cuts or scratches were evident to indicate resistance. Whitehorn had married Hattie Smitherman, a white woman, and suspicion had it that she killed him for his inheritance. Wow. Was it these incubators, babies, or what's going on, man? She was arrested twice, but was released both times for lack of evidence. Wow. They're just getting away with murder here, guys. Less than a year later, on March 26, 1922, one Anna Sanford, a lottie number 407, a full blood restricted Osage, died under mysterious circumstances. Restricted Indians were those under federal trust protection. Anna Sanford was married to a white man named Tom McCoy, and shortly after her death, McCoy married a woman who, coincidentally, was William Hale's niece. Wow. More suspicion began to point toward Hale and his nephew, Ernest Burkhardt, a veteran of World War I. Suspicions mounted when George Bighart, a rich Osage, lay dying of poisoned whiskey, and Hale and Burkhardt took him to a hospital in Oklahoma City. Bighart asked for his attorney, William Vaughn, who traveled from Pawhuska and talked with him at the hospital. No one ever learned what the conversation was about. As expected, Bighart died the next day, and soon afterward, Vaughn caught the MK&T train that night to return to Pawhuska. The following morning, Vaughn was found dead on the railroad right-off way. If speculation is correct, the lawyer stood in Hale's way to wealth. He could figure on an estate valued at $2.5 million, with an annual headright income of $250,000. Already rich, Hale wanted more, but at least 10 Osage had to die first, and anyone standing in his way would be eliminated, right? So they make it seem like, is this guy really working alone, or was he sent there by the government to get rid of the Indians, right? He's got to pay somebody too, right? Henry Roan Horse, Alati number 721, a cousin of Anna Brown's, became the next victim. On February 6, 1923, Roan was found dead in his automobile. For some unexplained reason, his car had been abandoned in an isolated range pasture on the reservation. It was never determined how long he had been dead, but it was certain that he had been murdered, for a .45 caliber bullet had been shot through his head. Interestingly, Hale held a policy worth $25,000 on Roan from Capital Life Insurance Company, a very large sum of money in those years, man. Wow. This guy was like straight corrupt, straight connected to and doing business. All these people doing business with him, all these banks, everything, they're all corrupt. So they knew what he was doing. Federal agents from the U.S. Bureau of Investigation observed that Molly Burkhardt, Ernest Osage's wife, had inherited the fortunes of her mother and her two murdered sisters, estimated at more than $100,000 a year. Rumors named William Hale and his nephew Ernest Burkhardt. The Roan killing proved the rumors to be correct. Henry Roan was murdered on government-restricted land, and William K. Hale and John Ramsey were charged with the crime. In a related crime, the state of Oklahoma charged Ernest Burkhardt as the conspirator who had arranged a nitroglycerin explosion that killed W.E. and Rita Smith and their housekeeper in Fairfax at 3 a.m. on the March of 1923. When trial began in Pawhuska in January 1926, Ernest Burkhardt took the stand. By this date, his wife Molly Brown Burkhardt had received an inheritance from some of the murdered Indians equal to more than $100,000 annually. She appeared wrapped in a blanket, riding in a limousine without a chauffeur before the Pawhuska courthouse each day of the trial. Noting that she showed no emotion and little interest in the trial, reporters speculated that she did not understand the details of or importance of the proceedings. So the infamous trials of the Smiths murderers began. Early in the proceedings, when prosecutors asked Burkhardt about his business or line of work, he answered contemptuously, I don't work, he says. I'm married in Osage. The trial resulted from a 3-year investigation conducted by the U.S. Bureau of Investigation. One federal agent acted as a Texas cattle buyer, another posed as an insurance salesman, and a third agent passed himself as a medicine man on the reservation. Over the 2 weeks of the trial, the mountain evidence and testimony convinced Ernest Burkhardt that he could not win his case, even with all his wife's money and the powerful influence of his uncle. He changed his plea to guilty and threw himself upon the mercy of the court, asking for a term of life imprisonment. In turning state's evidence, Burkhardt named his uncle, William K. Hale, as the person responsible for the murder conspiracy. He testified that Ace Kirby was the assassin who had actually blown up the Smith home and family, and he named one Henry Grammer as a go between. By coincidence, both Kirby and Grammer had been killed between the time of the crime and the time when they might have been called to the witnesses' stand. On the morning of June 21st, 1926, the courtroom was crowded. Shortly after 10 o'clock, Judge Jesse J. Wharton ordered Burkhardt to stand for his decision. The debonair Burkhardt smiled. The judge asked him if he knew any reason why the sentence should not be passed. He replied in the negative. Without hesitation, Judge Wharton sentenced Ernest Burkhardt to life imprisonment in the state penitentiary at McAllister, Oklahoma. Apparently relieved that it was over, Burkhardt smiled at friends in the courtroom. At this time, District Attorney Roy St. Louis asked the district court to permit William K. Hale and John Ramsey to be tried in federal court in Oklahoma City. Blackie Thompson, a notorious outlaw serving a life term in state prison, was released under immunity to testify that William Hale had offered him $1,000 and a new Buick to blow up the Smith home. Thompson had refused. Ernest Burkhardt, the weak link in the defense, finally confessed and testified against his uncle. He admitted that he had actually made the contract with the Smith's killer. Acting on instructions from Hale, Ernest had approached John Ramsey and failed to talk him into killing the Smiths. He also talked with the kingpin of the bootleggers, Henry Grammer, and failed to hire him for the job. Yeah. He made the offer to another outlaw, Curly Johnson, and failed. He had tried to hire train and bank robber Al Spencer, but he too refused. Finally, he made an agreement with one Ace Kirby. For $3,000, Ace used nitroglycerin, perhaps up to 10 quarts of the material reportedly stolen from Osage Torpedo Company, to blow up W.E. and Rita Smith and their housekeeper, a young white girl. They had a white servant, see? However, Ace Kirby could not be prosecuted. Some months earlier, he had been shot in half by a storekeeper's shotgun blast during an attempted robbery. Shot in half, like literally he got blown. His body got blown in half. Wow. He was trying to rob somebody. He messed with the wrong person. Testimony from the trial revealed that the explosion occurred at approximately 3 a.m. one morning, with the explosion leaving a hole 6 feet in diameter and 3.5 feet deep through the concrete. Wow. The United States also charged William K. Hale and John Ramsey, a cowboy farmer, with the killing of Henry Roan, a full-blood Osage, roll number 700. On January 31, 1923, additionally charging Hale with aiding, abetting, counseling, commanded, and procuring John Ramsey. In so doing, Marshal Dick Quinn and a group of federal officers transported Hale and Ramsey to the court at Guthrie, Oklahoma, where they would appear before the presiding judge, John H. Cotterill, and a grand jury. At this point, the Osage murders numbered 17. District Attorney Roy St. Louis represented the federal government, and S.P. Freeling was the chief defense attorney for Hale. Ramsey denied his prior confession, in which he admitted that he had shot Roan at Hale's demand. The king of the Osage remained still, staring coldly, and when questioned, he denied the whole thing. In 1926, the murder case went to trial in the state district court at Guthrie, Oklahoma, or Guthrie, right? But 2 months later, a stalemated jury failed to reach a verdict against William K. Hale and John Ramsey. Realizing the possible danger posed by Hale and his power to terrorize others, and aware that he might hire another killer, the Department of Justice in Washington transferred the trial from Guthrie to Oklahoma City, where Hale and Ramsey were again brought before a grand jury. Regarding the Roan killing, Ernest Burkhardt testified that Hale had hired Ramsey to kill Henry Roan for the price of a new Ford automobile and $500. The king of the Osage took the stand and denied everything again. Hale claimed that he had been in Fort Worth attending the livestock show when the Smith home was blown up. He insisted, furthermore, he had no reason to want Roan killed. This time the jury's verdict was guilty. Hale, Ramsey, and Burkhardt were sentenced to life imprisonment. Within days, the attorney for Hale and Ramsey filed appeals. January 19, 1926, Hale's attorney, Freeling and J.I. Howard, filed an appeal on 8 accounts to quash the indictment of Hale, and a Tulsa attorney named J.W. Springer filed a separate appeal based on 6 accounts seeking to quash the indictment of Ramsey. Both sets of attorneys for Hale and Ramsey based their appeals on the assertion that the prosecuting side had violated procedure and that the state of Oklahoma, instead of a federal court, should have jurisdiction over the case. Hale appealed and was retried. Ramsey appealed and was retried. On October 20, the court date arrived. The government was represented by Roy St. Louis, U.S. Attorney Oscar L. Loring, Assistant Attorney General Edwin Brown, Assistant Attorney General Horace Dyer, Assistant Attorney General John T. Leahy, Special Assistant Attorney General. The defense team consisted of J.I. Howard, W.S. Hamilton, Prince Freeling, and B.F. Week, representing Hale, and J.M. Springer, representing Ramsey. The Honorable John C. Pollock presided over the case. Both defendants pleaded not guilty. On the day of his murder, Henry Roan was wearing a light gray suit and some type of raincoat due to the usually cold weather during October in northern Oklahoma. He had $23.50 in his pocket and was wearing a watch and a small bracelet when J.R. Rhodes, a farmer and stock raiser, found his body slumped in the driver's seat at Roan's own Buick touring car. He had been shot in the back of the head with a .45 caliber bullet. Testimony given by the killer, John Ramsey, described the fatal happening and how it came about that Hale wanted him to murder Henry Roan. He stated that Hale went to Henry Grammer's ranch, where Ramsey worked and sold whiskey, and said he needed a job to be done. Hale asked Grammer to ask Ramsey if he would do it, and Ramsey replied to Grammer, "It depends on what the job is." Grammer said Hale wanted an Indian bumped off. A few days passed and Hale grew anxious about his request of Ramsey. He met Ramsey in Fairfax, where Ramsey reported, "Hale told me he was going to buy me a car and give me $500. So I told this Indian Roan to meet me out on the road running through Smith's pasture, that I would have some whiskey for him. He got out of the car and we sat on the running board of his car and drank what whiskey I had. The Indian then got in his car to leave, and then I shot him in the back of the head." But at his appeal, Ramsey gave a new account, claiming that Curly Johnson had actually killed Henry Roan. Ramsey stated that Burkhardt's wife intended to get a divorce and marry Roan. In fact, however, Molly Burkhardt had been Roan's wife before she married Burkhardt. And if she had divorced Burkhardt and remarried Roan, Ernest Burkhardt would have lost the wealth that Molly had inherited. Wow. From her mother and her murdered sisters. The prosecuting side then called William Hale to the witness stand and presented relevant documents as well. Hale denied any connections with the death of the rich Osage, but said that Roan owed him a large sum of money. Roan wanted to make certain that the money was paid back, according to Hale, so the Osage agreed to have an insurance policy taken out for him worth $25,000. If by chance he should die before repaying Hale, Hale made the following statement in court, offering the letter to the Capital Life Insurance Company as evidence. He says, "I had many different notes on Henry Roan's in different amounts. He came to me at one time and told me that he would like to take an insurance policy to make me safe in what he owed me. He said within a year he would be able to pay me all, or at least substantial part of what he owed me. I advanced to him, or told him I would advance to him money to pay the first premium. We calculated the amount he owed me, both on notes and on open accounts, and added a sufficient amount to pay the first year's premium on the policy. And he made a new note for $25,000 to pay the total amount, or rather, to take up the total amount by the new note. He then began to look about for the insurance on his life, as proposed by him. He secured the insurance from your company through an agent of yours. I will add further that after Henry Roan made me deliver the $25,000 note, that he became indebted to me in an additional sum of over $1,600 for further livestock bought and for money borrowed from me. So, as a matter of fact, at the time of his death, he owed me more than $25,000. Hale also added that Roan had shot himself in the arm in 1921, perhaps to impress the court that the Osage victim was self destructive. The grand jury decided that Ramsey and Hale had violated sections 273 and 275 of the U.S. Criminal Code by willfully murdering Henry Roan. On July 6, 1926, Hale and Ramsey were tried for the murder of Henry Roan in federal court in Guthrie, Oklahoma. After several weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for 44 hours and shocked many people with a deadlock, 6 voting for conviction and 6 for acquittal. In the fall of 1926, the case was retried in Oklahoma City, and after an 8-day trial, prosecutor St. Louis succeeded with the jury finding Hale and Ramsey guilty and sentencing them to 99 years in prison. Hale appealed to the U.S. 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. I mean, how many appeals do these guys get, right? Which overturned his verdict and granted him a new trial, wow, in federal court at Pawhuska in Osage County. You see, this guy had connections. This guy was an agent, man. How they let him keep giving him all these appeals, and now it's overturned again for the second time. In January, new trial in federal court at Pawhuska in Osage Country. In January 1929, Hale was found guilty again and was sentenced to 99 years at Fort Leavenworth Prison in Kansas. All right, so he lost again. As many as 20 killings of the Osage for their oil were uncovered, but not all of the murderers were brought to trial. In the case of William Hale and the Reign of Terror, the federal government officials worked 3 years before they could indict Hale in 1929. But by that time, Hale had arranged the killings of all but 2 of his intended victims. J.T. Leahy represented the Osage, and the tribe contributed $20,000 of the $180,000 that it cost to investigate and conduct the trial. Entering prison on May 30th, 1929, Hale was paroled on July 31st, 1947. Wow, he got out. The Osage National Council protested to no avail. 4 months later, Ramsey was released on parole. Wow. And Burkhart, who had turned state's evidence against his uncle Ramsey, was released 12 years later. Wow. In October 1959, they all got freed, guys. Eventually, the reign of terror killings came to a halt, and peace came to the bottom towns of Carter, Nine, Huckshooter, Pershings, Whizbang, and Wild Horse. Yeah, they had killed all the important people. But as one looked across the Osage land, the oil derricks continued to pump black crude near the Burbank, Fairfax, and Schittler. In many ways, for both the Osage and the rest of America, the Roaring Twenties was an age of recklessness. In their part of the country, the Osage spent huge amounts of money. An average Osage family of 5 had an income of $65,000 annually. Such wealth brought luxuries and extravagance. See what these people are doing, the mixed bloods, the descendants of the foreign, ones who mix, yeah. The Pierce arrows that were popular among the Osage were sometimes discarded when they ran out of gas or got stuck in the mud. The only roads on the reservation took the rich Osage to Pawhuska, Hominy, Foraker, Big Heart, and Fairfax. Yet one person went through 10 automobiles in 1 year. Wow, come on. Like automobiles, fancy houses were also purchased, and priceless china and silverware sat on shelves while the Osage ate with their fingers, as was their customs. Expensive vases were used to store vegetables rather than as decorative items, and grand pianos had served no useful purpose, stood out on lawns in rain or shine. Man, you guys hearing this? During the space of one afternoon in 1927, an Osage woman spent $12,000 for a fur coat, man, $3,000 for a diamond ring, $5,000 for an automobile, and another $7,000 for furniture, which she had shipped to California at the cost of another $600. Guys, listen to this, mad money for one person during those times, 1920s. How many people are poor, right? Are these people getting paid? In California, she had put $4,000 down as a deposit on a house. And during the same business transaction, she invested $12,000 in real estate in Florida. She finally did something smart. The rich Osage lived in a world of illusion. without incentives, a world whose values seriously disrupted their kingship society and affected their entire world view. Unimaginable wealth introduced to white society's cultural materialism to the Osage, right? Not just that, but the blood too, their blood, at a shocking pace. Still operating within a traditional value system, the Osage valued things differently. To them, the family and kinship relations in their communities superseded the cultural materialism of the white world. From an outsider's perspective, it seems that the Osage did not truly appreciate the luxury goods they accumulated as they mixed with white society, as they kept mixing because they were already mixed, like I was saying, like I told us earlier. These are the ones on the roll, right? These are the ones after, right? They had already that blue blood said that we don't want to deal with none of this. We don't want lots. We don't want to participate. So it says, meanwhile, going unnoticed was the fact that the white culture, sudden wealth and murders were destroying the Osage family unit and distorting the traditional values. That was the whole plan from the beginning. However, not all of the Osage lived in luxury. Serving as a government inspector in the 1920s, Dr. Charles A. Eastman, a Santee Sioux, Charles Eastman, who held a medical degree, surveyed the conditions of the Osage and made his report. Of the 372 restricted adults he observed, 188 had court-appointed guardians. Wow. And only 130 had permanent homes in Osage County in Oklahoma. The remainder made their homes with their parents or grandparents, and there were 283 minor allottees. 52 of them had guardians, and there were 165 unallotted minors receiving payments through inheritance, of which 150 had guardians. Wow. See, there's people, like there's middlemen in all these people's monies, and they got so-called guardians, right? The hijacks, the handlers. In addition, 92 allottees who had legal court-appointed guardians had received certificates of competency. Of the 130 Osage families in Eastman's survey, 15 adults had intermarried with whites, 21 were widows or single, and 104 were married to other Osage. The total number of restricted adult Osage included in his survey was 234, leaving 138 restricted Osage who were either absent from the reservation or were minors. Of the latter, so look at that, 138, that's a lot. They're not even involved. Of the latter group, some had married but had no homes. They did not work and they lived with their parents and relatives. Dr. Eastman stated if their oil should fail, the Osage people would be in a hard predicament, more so than any other Indian tribe because they had lived expensively and have become accustomed to it. He concluded that Osage people have grown to be suspicious and snobbish because of their wealth. You guys see that? Listen, they switched. These are different people. They're not the original. They're not acting like the original. They have become a different people. All right. It is a matter of self-defense. There are quite a number of them very anxious to get away from this state and go where they can live in peace. Huh. Right? So that was, Eastman in the 1920s. The Osage experienced an incredible increase in their yearly incomes, especially after the discovery of oil in their lands. For example, during the 1880s, they received $10 and a half per year. In 1900, $200 annually. In 1910, $250. In 1915, $221. And in 1920, the year of the first murder, $8,000. In 1921, the four murders happened, $12,000. The U.S. Bureau of Investigation recorded that until January 30, 1931, approximately 2,000 Osage with head rights were paid a total net revenue, listen, guys, of $241,546,289. And they blew it all and all that. And then they had guardian people taking it from them, murdering them. Wow. Although the Osage survived Hale's murderous reign of terror, one family and individuals related to them by marriage did not. The death of this family caused a missing link in the community during this tragic experience of murders. Although the windfall of money from oil was the obvious external factor in undermining the Osage, The family also came under attack, weakening the internal cohesion of the people. Externally, the Osage had to deal with a different system of cultural values and philosophical views. Furthermore, the oil industry thrust the Osage into confrontations with people wanting their lands and believing that they should be a part of the American system, whether they like it or not. As the Great Depression hit the Osage and the rest of the country in 1929, Commissioner of Indian Affairs C.J. Rhodes accepted the advice of Superintendent J. George Wright at the Osage Agency, calling for a regulation that would allow adult Osage or less than half blood to write for permission to withdraw their surplus funds to meet their needs. Undoubtedly, the Osage were not ready for the shrewd capitalism that impacted their lives, followed by the economic suffering due to the depression. The depression, that's all by design. The more you look into it, a lot of people were coming up, especially black folks and Indians, and they just halted it with the depression. The earlier riches would be remembered when there was a resurgence in the oil industry in the 1970s and 1980s. In 1982, 11,200,000 barrels of oil and 8,600 million cubic feet of gas were produced annually from the Osage land. But the tribe members owned less than 200,000 acres of the surface in Osage County. The sad story of the Osage in the 1920s is legendary, and it is a vivid reminder of the worst that can come from the greed encouraged by American capitalism. The corporation now is U.S. global capitalism, right? And that all started, again, by giving a corporation legitimacy, acknowledging them, and that's what the Treaty of Peace and Friendship with Morocco did. Where Washington had this, it allowed them to become a legit country, a nation. This was a corporation. And then they expanded, U.S. expansion, eventually leading to things like this: American capitalism, manifest destiny, murder for profit, murder for profit. It also is a lesson in what can happen when American Indians are robbed of family, one of the fundamental elements of their society, robbed of family, stripped of their traditional strength and their interdependence on each other. The family members were easy prey for predators like William K. Hale, right? Because they don't have their elders, because we don't have our elders today. I'm saying we had our elders, but even our elders didn't know. They grew up in a society where they didn't have the right leadership or elders. And so, this is why we're all lost, man. And we're just learning everything again and remembering, right, who we are. We got stripped of our traditional strength and of our interdependence on each other. Okay? It's all about the tribe, man, the family, the blood. Remember that. It's not about the money. You gotta have love. Where's your heart at? You gotta do it for your people. It's not about your money, your success. And remember what happened to the Osage here in this episode and in time and these people, And remember what the original ones looked like more. And I showed those images earlier. I hope you guys really enjoyed the reading. And if you didn't know this story, again, I believe this is the same as the movie that Leonardo DiCaprio did. So this is like a backstory here a little bit, crash course. You can go watch the movie if you haven't, And again, appreciate everybody that tuned in, took the time to be here, read with me all the way to the end this chapter, again, under fair use for review and education. Thank you once again, everybody, all your support, anybody that was here in the live chat, all my moderators, my supporters, Patreon, and my channel members, my longtime followers. Appreciate you guys. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Hope, again, enjoyed the reading. We will definitely get back into another review of another chapter of this book in a future video. All right. And again, sharing this book on my Patreon page soon. Very soon. All right. A lot of books. Thank you once again, guys. You have a great rest of your day. Much love and respect. Pura vida, mi gente. Hawa.